So, guys, welcome to another episode of B-Side Podcasts, where we discuss business, blockchain, and of course, Bitcoin. Today with me is Pavel Jakovlev. Pavel, it's so great to have you.
Likewise, man. Absolutely excited to be here. You're definitely much more tan than I am, being in Dubai. So I'm in the cloudy, wintry Switzerland. But yeah, excited to be here. I'm not sure whether your intention has been to play on the naming, so B-sides. So for me, I'm a big music fan, and whenever there's some of the bands that I like would release the B-sides or effectively some of their unreleased
Yeah.
materials, it will always be a gem, right? I'm a big fan of the editors, and like whenever they do B-sides, it's just like amazing. Some really good stuff. So I hope that's going to be it.
Yeah, that was like a multi-layer, I would say, naming, brainstorming, but that's one way to put it. That's as well one of the interpretation. Well, Pavel, it's so great to have you because you've got like a vast experience in startups, advisory, fundraising, marketing, and communication. And I think most of those things are pretty hard for founders in this space because they are usually tech savvy geeks, super tech oriented, etc. So I would love to learn from your experience, and the audience would love to learn from your experience. What are like the biggest challenge? But before that, let's make it like a bit more general question. What do you think the future actually holds for Web3 space and for Web3 startups? Is it a hype that's going to pass once again, or is it going to stay? What is the future? What are the most interesting areas that you think that this can develop to?
That's a great question. So I've been in the space for 6, 7 years now. I was born out of the previous bear cycle, has rode the highs of the bull, the previous bull. I can proudly wear a badge of survivor of the bear
OG.
now. And now we're getting into the next bull. However, that bull will look like, we will see. Nobody knows for sure, but definitely things have changed tremendously. So I'm just excited to see where we're gonna go. The reason why I'm in this space specifically is because if you subtract the obvious negativity that surrounds it, I think some of the more interesting things that I'm particularly excited about is this fusion of tech and creativity, and I think that both tech and creativity join through necessity. And I think the only other place where you see that, both creativity and marketing and these beautiful designs and all of the other stuff is with like large hardware manufacturers like Apple. So that's why for me, whenever I see things that are being developed, that look aesthetically appealing, that are, some products or dApps or however you want to call it, that actually innovative when it comes to technology, and at the same time bring in some interesting creative approaches to marketing or the way they look and feel. So for me, it's an interesting fusion, I would say, and I haven't seen anything like this anywhere in any other sectors. Not that I know much right now. I'm pretty deep in this industry. In terms of what the future holds, I think what we're going to go through, I think right now, this is going to be one last hurrah of a kind of sort of unregulated craziness, which we've
Yeah.
seen so far. And despite the fact that there are several regulators that are trying to regulate this thing, I still believe that the regulators don't necessarily get it. I think they don't understand the nature of the open source economy, the fact that anybody, if they spend a tiny little bit amount of time on understanding how basic Solidity works, and with a bit of hype on X, effectively can launch their own stablecoin, right? And and
Yeah.
and that whole thing has been, for example, completely absent from the Mika and Mika R regulation so that scenario. So, but I think regulators will get it, and I think there's going to be they just need time, right? And
Mhm.
we'll go through that uptake of regulation and will be brought into the fold. We've seen that with other industries. We've seen the same thing, happening with gambling, for example. So I think it's going to happen, like especially, online gambling.
But so do
So
you
that's
think
going to
that?
happen. Regulation is going to ramp up for sure. And there's going to be, we see that with, cross-border stuff. And again, if you really want to be anonymous and hide from the authorities and do whatever, you're still able to do that, but you need to effectively completely use like anonymous devices, VPN, and it's just too much work, I would say, for
Yeah.
regular crypto users. So I think regular users, opportunists, early investors, backers, contributors, everybody's going to be brought into the fold. And once that's brought into the fold, the next big thing is going to happen, in my opinion, is going to be market consolidation, and
Hmm.
that's also inevitable. So effectively, we internally and with some of our partners and friends guesstimate that the big M&A spree is going to happen in the next 5 to 10 years. And
Hmm.
then we'll see, right? Then we will see what that is.
Amongst all of the types of the projects, right? So exchanges, oracles, chains, etc., etc. I totally agree. I think that this is what happens on more mature markets where the big guys actually take over and they do the next steps via acquisitions rather than just organic growth. That seems like a logical business thing to do. That's great, but you've mentioned also the bull run and the cyclical kind of element to it. Is it the only thing that actually makes the Web3 industry dynamic special? Like, do you think there are any other specific elements around Web3 startups and industry in general that make it different than the other parts of the economy? Or do you think that this bull bear market narrative actually, and of course, money that goes goes in and goes out, determines all of that?
I think the fact that what we saw during the last bull, I think was an anomaly, and I think a lot of that was driven by the crazy liquidity injection that we've seen due to Corona times. And now it's pretty evident that if you look at the global environment in general, I mean, we're in a couple of regional wars, right? There's a war in Europe, there's a war
Yeah.
in the Middle East. There's all these different things. There's a clear liquidity crunch, and that liquidity crunch is affecting the public. And so, the prices has doubled, tripled in developed countries. God knows what's happening in developing countries. So all of that basically leads you to the question of, well, how much cash we're going to have in our industry to do all the crazy stuff that we did before. Let's see. We have to go through the historically again, and none of the past performances guarantee future performances, but historically, things start to heat up post halving.
Hmm.
We've also seen the ETFs, multiple ETFs come online. Have we seen the craziness around that? Not really. It was nice. It was a testament. It was, yeah, great, amazing. So, from buying pizzas, 10 years ago, and you know, potentially paying for drugs on Silk Road, and hiring hitmen, we're all of a sudden it's an actual asset that's wrapped in an exchange traded fund vehicle, and it's traded on major exchanges worldwide, and everybody and their grandma can buy it. It's very interesting from that perspective. but we haven't seen that influx of liquidity that everybody has effectively thought about. Why is that? Most probably because the price doesn't necessarily reflect the insanity that people might, have the excuse to participate in this market yet. Will we see it? Most probably. There are far smarter people than I am, like Kathy Woods, who I'm a big fan of, who
Yeah.
proclaim that most probably, Bitcoin is going to be at some crazy 7-digit numbers at one point. Most probably. We'll see. Now in Switzerland, there's some discussions in terms of, are you able to allocate portion of your pension towards a Bitcoin ETF? Like
Oh,
things
really?
are going to start happening. Yeah, 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 of course. So the way that it's structured here is it's three layers. So the first layer is basically the government covers your first
Mm-hmm.
tranche. The second tranche is it's a combination between what you pay in as part of your wage and the company contribution, and these two are
Mm-hmm.
mandatory. And then the third one is not necessarily mandatory, but you can claw it back from your taxes. And then and there's also like a limited amount that you can put in per year. And effectively, so far, banks have been profiting the most from this, saying, like, just leave your third pillar with us and we'll invest it for you,
Mm-hmm.
in locked accounts for a
Sure.
period of time. And then you're going to earn 0.35% on it for the duration of whatever. But the good thing is that you cannot claw back. And then the question would be, okay, but if I have full autonomy in terms of where do I allocate this third pillar, do I have the full autonomy to allocate it towards Bitcoin, for example, and then claw it back from my taxes, which doesn't sound like a bad thing. So far, you can only allocate about, if you do that, like I'd say, point two of Bitcoin per year, which is not too crazy, but it's something, and most probably over years it would add up. You know.
Yeah.
Well, let's see, man. I mean, it's definitely interesting and exciting. I'm 100% bullish on Bitcoin. I think Bitcoin is, in general, it's becoming less of a liquid asset, which is great for some narratives, and then for other narratives, less great because it defeats the purpose of Bitcoin.
Yeah.
We'll see, man. We'll see. Don't
But
have a crystal
no,
ball.
I'm on the same page here. I think what happened in the US with ETFs actually legitimized Bitcoin as a worldwide recognizable um, asset class, and I think it was a game changer. And I think we will see the effects of that in the next couple of months, or probably the biggest effects in a couple of years. But that was definitely monumental. And the price action, I think, you know, as we both agree on, price is not the value. The value is measured in different metrics rather than the price. Price is just a point in time where the market says, this is what I'm going to sell it for, or this is what I'm going to buy it for. That's it. But it's not about how many users actually use it, what's the hash rate, what's the difficulty, et cetera, et cetera. All those metrics that actually make sure that this network is growing is useful. So I think we're on the same page here, and I'm looking forward to the future of Bitcoin very optimistically. But I wanted to get back a bit to all the other startups and all the other projects that
Mhm.
you're involved with. And from your
Mhm.
practice, what do you think are like two or three main areas that are going to be most exciting in crypto space or Web3 space in general?
That's a tough one because there's a lot of stuff that I'm particularly excited about, and we clearly see this as a trend. So some type of Bitcoin programmability will become available. I mean, it's prone to, I think, with enough talent and enough capital being poured into the bit, and I'm not talking just BRC20, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's everything. It's all of the virtual machines and all of the L2s and the direct integrations on ICP and all sorts of different things. So I think with
Mm-hmm.
enough resources and time and effort, something's going to get solved. And effectively, what you do want to have is that the Bitcoin network is like Windows 3.11, I think, right? It's good, it's stable, it's uncompromisable yet. And but then you want to do more with it, maybe potentially somehow, and you want to program it and you want to make it more useful. And we've seen that with the BRC20 and inscriptions and like people going absolutely crazy about all these different things. But that's those things were still a tiny little bit of gimmicky, but it's good that we've had that, right? But then what is it? What else can we potentially build on top of that? Are we looking at
So more use cases on
assets?
Bitcoin.
For sure, assets being issued with the use of Bitcoin, Bitcoin used as a collateral because
Yeah,
I don't understand, and I'm gonna get flamed for this. I don't understand why would you want to lock your liquid asset to issue more liquid assets, which is happening in the Ethereum ecosystem. Like it doesn't make sense. You usually lock the liquid asset to make a liquid asset more liquid by locking it, right? You have a house or you can pawn your phone to issue some cash against it. You cannot pay with your phone, but if you pawn it, you can get some cash and you can go and you can spend
yeah.
it. So it's the same thing here. So with Bitcoin becoming more illiquid, pawning it and making it more liquid would be an interesting way of operating with it. And then we see the gaming narrative for me is an interesting one. I don't know much about it. There are way smarter people that I interface with, that I build with, who know much more about everything GameFi and new models and
Hmm.
everything. But to me, the big question mark is always going to be the users, whether
Hmm.
whatever we build is going to be developed with users in mind rather than, oh, let's issue a bunch of coins and a bunch of NFTs and then, a bunch of nodes. And then somehow this hodgepodge should work together and potentially onboard zero users. So that's a big one for me. So I think if you put users or gamers first, then maybe the narratives are going to be far more interesting. So we'll see.
Have you heard about
Um,
GTA 6 implementing? Have you heard about these rumors about GTA 6 implementing Web3 technology? So most probably some NFTs, etc. That would be, running on public blockchains. I don't know if it's true, if it's happening, but if so, then we've got like triple A game that actually, pushes this technology to the edges in terms of popularity, I would say. So I totally agree. I think gaming is an interesting space, but as you said, it has to be like super simple, user friendly, user first approach rather than just issuing the tokens that. And the tricky part is, I mean, the tricky part, the great thing about onboarding gamers to Web3 is I saw a report, I don't remember exactly the name, but it seemed like gamers have got like pretty much the same profile to traders in
mhm.
terms of personal characteristics. They like risk, they like new technologies, they like getting points, they like competing, etc. So it seems like it's a great match for example, for exchanges to try and onboard the gamers to their platforms, because this is the environment that they are in a way comfortable with. So I think if we can also introduce those kind of elements that are native to gamers into the crypto exchanges, and this already happens to some extent, right? You've got like a lot of those gamified missions, etc., etc. It's still like clumsy, but I think this is the direction, and I think those great exchanges, they know that there's like 3 billion gamers around the world, and there's like only 500 million crypto users around the world. So it's 6x, I would say, to do on that.
Yeah, for sure, man. And I think the best example is obviously Blur, right? That gamified the hell out of
Yeah.
the Ponzonomics,
Hmm.
and that's where you want to be, right? You want to make experiences fun and gamified and addictive, and that's what games activate within your brain. So, and then of course that whole notion of owning your assets, trading them, building certain things up, having some kind of a universal engine, matching engine for all the in-game things, 100%. That narrative is there. One of the better narratives that's out there is Portal Coin. I don't know
Hmm.
if if you've seen it,
No.
for a period of time. For a period of time, they did like this insane airdrop, and for a period of time, my whole timeline was just like Portal Coin, Portal Coin, Portal Coin, Portal Coin, like everything, just like people going completely crazy about it. They're gearing up
Okay.
for the TGE. They're really, really nice guys. Insane numbers, like 200 plus titles. Obviously the cross-chain narrative, insane amount of KOLs, backers, everything. So very, very interesting. And their whole promise is this, right? So bring your titles, traditional Web2 titles, and we'll put them on
Mm.
Web3, and we'll make it sleek and easy for your users, not even to touch and feel whatever the hell they're doing, which is,
Hmm.
it's a great narrative to me. And then if we go back to like two, three examples, so two examples I gave you, so it's Bitcoin programmability is definitely gaming, but I don't know what shape and form it's going to be. And the third one is a bit of a wild card because
Mm.
it may or may not happen, but I think we're going to see some kind of a contestant to the EVM ecosystem. I think we're ripe for that. And it's not going to be any of the guys that you would immediately think. Like it's not going to be Cardano because it's dead. It's not going to be Tezos because they just missed the boat tremendously. So I got to be Polkadot. Like, stop beating that horse. It's dead.
Mm.
No, don't even try to go there. It's not gonna. I don't know whether it's gonna be Bitcoin or one of the L2s on Bitcoin. It could be that as well. But I think the scalability issue that we're seeing now with ETH and all of the L2s is, I think it's more of a, it's we're increasing the problem rather than finding solutions. That's
Okay.
how I see it.
That's an interesting take. Um, so let's say I've got a revolutionary idea.
Hmm.
Let's say I have one, and I've got a bunch of very smart technical people. So we start building something. We've got like the first users, but then we stuck. Then we
Hmm.
don't know how to grow above from this organic movement that we were able to actually uh, commands amongst our networks. How do you grow? Like literally, what are the, let's say first two or three steps that you have to implement to actually start your growth strategy as a Web3 project?
If you're an L1, you just simply need a good a good bag to play with and
Mm,
an effective DevRel strategy, I would say. And so developer relations, and that's how you would grow, right? And
mm,
sometimes what we see with some of the ecosystems, a lot of these things are formed naturally, and the others are just you have to give them a tiny little bit of a push, and they
mm-hmm.
just happen. And people need to get excited about, I think, the narrative that you have. You have to be pretty good at storytelling. It's quite difficult because what you're building is pretty sophisticated and techy and nerdy. So you need to find that balance between capturing, um, folks
General
that are
attention. Yeah.
general attention in terms of like, why would you? Because the age of, the monolith L1s, as I would call them, is over, right? There's no
Mm-hmm.
more EOS, there's no more Polkadot, there's no more Cardano, there's no more Tezos. Nobody cares. Everybody wants to spin up their OP, optimistic stack node, fork optimism, get an L2 going, or, if they're a tiny little bit more brainy, maybe, go set up a hyperchain on ZK Sync. And that's it. These are your options, kind of.
That's
So that I would say like that would be an interesting way of, figuring stuff up and growing. And then you need to have whatever you have needs to cut the mustard, because if you don't have prime VCs in the space,
hmm
you're not gonna get far. But if you do, I mean, look at Blast, right? Blast is backed by Paradigm,
yeah.
and it's going to be pretty good for everybody.
hmm
So we'll see. And then, so capital, DevRel, definitely, and then storytelling is another one pretty important element. And then community management. Like, there's no,
Yeah.
you have to hire, like, people skimp out on community managers. You can't. You need to hire top level guys.
Mm.
I think, like, community management in general, from being some of the cheapest, most undervalued jobs, is going to become even more and more and more prominent, because there's a lot of mods, but there's not a lot of really good community leads and community managers.
Mm.
And that
Yeah.
to me is key.
I think you're on the spot here. I think it's a challenge to actually be able to invigorate the whole community and to make them, passionate about something. As you mentioned, techie. Like at the end of the day, it's a techie stuff. So you have to really make sure that you build your story in an approachable way that actually makes people excited. Well, Pavel, thanks a lot. Thanks for sharing your insight. That was a great conversation. Guys, if you enjoyed it, please click subscribe and like this film. Also, if as Pavel and me, you guys are bullish on Bitcoin but don't know where to start, please make sure to visit our website at bitcoinfocus.com, and I'm here to help. So I'll give you a hand with the first steps to get your first Bitcoin. Thank you so much, Pavel, once again, and see you all next time.
Thanks for having me, man. Cheers.
Cheers.